Hello, Trish the Gong Gardener here. Today I'm talking about mulching plants. In the demonstration today I show how to mulch straight on top of weeds, but you can also use this technique to mulch onto your garden beds. Before I show the demonstration, I'd like to talk about why it's important to mulch. Mulching is one of the best things you can do for your garden. It helps your plants grow and helps them establish and remain strong and healthy. There is a wrong way to mulch, so in the demonstration I'll go through that as well. Mulch helps retain moisture in the soil longer by conserving water. It also helps retain nutrient in the soil. It helps soil temperature be constant, warmer in winter, cooler in summer. It improves soil structure and drainage. As it decomposes, it opens up a clay soil and it helps bind a sandy soil. It helps against soil erosion and compaction, and organic mulch slowly adds many different nutrients and beneficial fungi to the soil, so it's a gentle, slow-release fertiliser. It prevents weeds which would otherwise take moisture and nutrient from your plants. Another benefit is that mulches are byproducts. Mulch support life in the soil. Life in the soil is so important for your plant's health. It's great to know that natural mulches, including manures, add organic matter to the soil that supports life such as earthworms and other beneficial soil life, both macro and microscopic. Mulch creates healthier plants. Healthy plants create for themselves a great defence system. Let your mind think about gardening as primarily below ground level. If you do this, your plants and beneficial activity such as insects, birds, reptiles and the like above soil level will prosper, thus enabling a balance of nature in your garden. The beneficial activity that mulch creates allows your plants to defend themselves against pests, diseases and weather extremes. This is fine wood chip mixed through with cow manure. This mulch here is spoilt lucerne and it's mixed with cow manure, so more byproduct. And in the walking paths in this garden is tree trimmings. This camellia here is Professor Sargent. This is wood chip mulch, so it's a mixture of the bark of trees and also the wood part of the trees. So you can see it's all different sizes, so this won't compact and stick together. And if I was using this, I would mix it with manure or 2 handfuls to the square metre of blood and bone as well to help it break down faster. And organic liquid feed is also good to break down mulch. This is a Pyrus nivalis or snow pear. It was planted a year ago. You really shouldn't let the grass grow underneath it from the start. But here I'll show a quick way to deal with the weeds and then mulch at the same time. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove this stake. Because once the tree's mature and can hold up itself, it doesn't need staking anymore. And then I'm just going to remove the grass that's around the trunk. Just the grass that's in close proximity to the trunk. Drench the area and make sure the water's soaking in. So we'll give it a good drench for a few minutes, and then I'm going to dig down and check that the water has penetrated through the soil. And what I do then after it's well hydrated is I mulch the ground and I just put it on top of the weeds. So I'm just doing a thin layer for this layer. So I look at the drip line of the tree and I go out to the drip line. Then I spread it out evenly. So that's about 3 or 4 centimetres deep. Then put newspaper, and that's going to suppress the weeds. You can also use cardboard. It's about 10 sheets thick, but don't put it too close next to the trunk. Then wet down the whole area, wet in all the newspaper or cardboard, just to give it a good soak. And the second last bit, before you water it again after you put this mulch down, we put another layer on top of the newspaper to hide the newspaper. And when you plant into a grassed area, you're best off not having the grass roots competing with the roots of your tree. So what I did was I weeded around the trunk of the tree, then I saturated the whole area, checking that it wasn't hydrophobic. You can add fertiliser if you want to. This mulch has cow manure in it, so that's a gentle fertiliser. Then I put a layer of mulch, saturated again. Then I put newspaper and a bit of cardboard, saturated that, made sure that the newspaper and cardboard was overlapping. Then I put another layer of mulch on top and saturated that. If it's this weedy under your tree, know that if you flatten these weeds with these seed on, the seed will germinate as the mulch breaks down. So it's a good idea to mow under it with the catcher on to catch the seed, and you can do the mulching technique on top of there, or you can hand pull. This here is mature Pyrus nivalis, so it's out in the open and it's about 9 or 10 metres wide, about 5 or 6 metres high. As you can see, the grass is allowed to grow beneath this tree. You can either mulch to the drip line of a tree or not worry so much when the tree is mature that grass is allowed to grow underneath, as grass has shallower roots than the tree, and as the tree gets older it's able to put its roots down deeper into the profile. With shallow rooted plants such as citrus and camellias, it doesn't matter how mature the tree is, always avoid competition from grass. And also make sure the mulch is pulled back away from the main trunk to avoid collar rot. It's very important to make sure your soil is not water repellent. This area was drenched, but as you can see, when I dig down, the soil is dry. This means it's highly likely the soil has become hydrophobic. It's important to apply a wetting agent prior to mulching. When dealing with onion weed, use cardboard and not newspaper because cardboard takes longer to break down. Make sure the soil is well hydrated under the cardboard, because if not, you run the risk of the soil becoming water repellent. When mulching over grass weeds like kikuyu or cooch, some people apply weed killer. These grasses can set rhizomes deep into the soil profile. If you are using a non-weed spray method, you'll need to repeat the mulching process more often, but eventually the weeds set their rhizomes higher in the soil, making them easier to pull. Also mulching these palm trees. So these are Jabea palms, same as those big ones there. Chilean wine palms. So very slow growing. So these have got drip irrigation, so I'm just going to put down some fertiliser, then I'm going to put newspaper and then mulch. So because the drip irrigation's underneath, that will water the area really well. Then add a generous layer of newspaper, wet it down. Avoid coloured cardboard because it's usually got a layer of plastic on it. It's no good. And here's the job finish on the Jabea. So in about 6 months' time it will need a redo, so just redo it in the same process as done here. You can also add tree surround edging of some sort, but you've got to make sure that you go out further than the drip line of your tree, and as the tree ages and gets wider, you need to move your edging out further. Now to a few don'ts. Don't mulch on hydrophobic soil. Make sure it's well wetted underneath the first layer of mulch before you mulch. If it's still dry after you water, you need to add some wetting agent. Don't mulch too thickly. So your mulch needs to be about 50 to 70 millimetre thick, or 3 to 4 inches, so about that. If you mulch too thickly, you can run the risk of water not being able to penetrate through the mulch. Avoid mulch that's contaminated with weed seed. So if you use horse manure, make sure it's well composted, and make sure the horses haven't been eating onion weed seed. And also make sure if you use compost that's also well composted and the seeds in the compost have broken down, or alternatively, don't put weed seeds in your compost. Avoid using chunky, lightweight mulch. These mulches can sometimes float away when you get heavy rain, and also it takes a long time to break down, and what you want for your soil is you want your mulches to break down quickly. As I mentioned earlier, don't use coloured cardboard, and don't mulch on top of weeds that have seeded. Don't use poultry manures or mushroom compost on acid-loving plants. Don't over-fertilise, it doesn't make your soil better. Whether it's under non-organic or organic mulch, never use synthetic weed mat or plastic. Dust, dirt and weed seed land on top, and weeds flourish and your plants can slowly die. Mix fast to break down materials such as straw, compost, animal manures, seaweed, fine leaf litter, with slower to break down materials such as wood chip, coarse leaf litter or bark. Apply a little blood and bone or organic fertiliser to hasten the breakdown and release the nutrient from the mulch. Using organic material provides food for millions of microorganisms in your soil, including beneficial fungi. Most plants form a relationship with beneficial fungi. These microorganisms help your plant build a tolerance to drought, high temperatures, some pathogens and some herbicides. Fungi send out thread-like attachments through the soil and bring back nutrient elements to your plants. So as I said at the beginning of the video, think of gardening as primarily below ground level, and then your plants and wildlife on top of the soil will thrive. Another thing that I'd like to add that I always say is when you have a healthy soil, instead of weeds competing with your plants compete with the weeds. In videos coming up, I'll show you how to prune a China rose, and you use the same technique for pruning any multi-stem plant. Thank you so much for listening, and if you haven't done so already, check out the last video I made on Hippeastrum papilio, a very special Hippeastrum. I talk about the history of this plant and all the requirements for how to grow this plant. And see you next time. Thank you. Bye.